This week in our Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast, we have dedicated ourselves to looking at the issue of morality or immorality as found in the book of Proverbs. And that is pretty much cloistered together, that discussion in chapters 5, 6, and 7. But we're going to start today in chapter 2 and start by looking at some of the consequences of immorality. There's some grave consequences. We're going to look at a number of them very quickly today. He shows a picture in chapter 2, verse 18 of a sinking house. For her house sinks down to death, and her tracks leads to death, to the dead. None who go to her return again, nor do they reach the paths of life. First of all, it's like a sinking house, like being in a house on top of a mine shaft that's caving in, and you're sinking down into that depravity of death that comes with immorality. And none that go to her, it says, will ever return again. In other words, the consequences of this kind of action can be long-term, and in many cases, people never recover from this type of sin in one way or the other. Secondly, there's groaning in the end of things. Chapter 5 and verse 11 says, "And you groan at your final end, when your flesh and your body are consumed. And you say, how have I hated instruction, and my heart spurned reproof. I have not listened to the voice of my teachers, nor inclined my ear to my instructors. And so we groan at the end. Now what looked enticing and fun and wonderful and exciting at first, ends at the end of the game, brings nothing but groaning and sadness. Why did not I listen to my mom and dad? Why didn't I listen to my church leaders and people who tried to guide me in the right direction? Why didn't I do that? Now all I have is sorrow and groaning as a result." In chapter 6, verse 26, it says that this individual is basically reduced to a loaf of bread. You've heard that term. It comes from right here, 6:26. "For on account of a harlot, one is reduced to a loaf of bread, and an adulteress hunts for the precious life." Reduced to a loaf of bread. What an ugly picture. Bread is made to consume. And so we're reduced to something that just is consumed, and there's nothing more left of us. And then in the next verse, he talks about being burnt by this sin. He says in verse 22 or verse 27, he says, "Can a man take fire into his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Or can a man walk on hot coals and his feet not be scorched?" Almost everybody who plays around with immorality thinks that they will escape unharmed. You know, they're going to get by with something. They're going to be deceptive. They're going to hide. They're going to have their moment, and then they're going to move back, and nobody will know. And by the way, all this is applicable not only to physical contact with another person, but also to things such as pornography that is pervading our world today in unbelievable ways, even in the Christian community. Be very aware. All these things are very applicable to pornography as well as physical action. But he says here, this person apparently thought they could get by with it. No harm done. Nobody's going to catch up with me. But he says clearly, can a man take fire into his bosom and not be burned? Try that at your fireplace sometime, or a campfire. Take some coals and take them onto your lap and sit there for a minute or two and see what happens. Well, you probably won't do that because you already know what's going to happen. You're going to get burnt, and you might get burnt extremely badly if you did that. So that's the exact picture here. We know better than to take fire and put it in our lap. We know what's going to happen. So why are we so naive to think we can play with the fire of sexual sins and not suffer the consequences, not be burnt by them? A wonderful picture. Verse 28 says the same thing. Can you walk on hot coals? I don't think you can without your feet being burned. He gives us another picture in 7:22 when he talks about an ox to slaughter. 7:22 reads this way, "Suddenly he follows her as an ox goes to slaughter, as one in fetters to the discipline of a fool." An ox is a powerful animal. It could overrun its trainer easily, but it could be led by a little boy with a hook in the nose of that ox, because the ox doesn't know what's up. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know he's being led to slaughter. So he doesn't know that someone is taking him down the road to slaughter him. He just thinks he's going for a walk. And that's exactly the picture that we're given here of immorality. To give into immorality is like an ox going to slaughter. We know where you're going. Solomon is warning, here's where you're going. Don't do that. Don't be taken in by that. And one more picture, verse 23, like a bird in a snare. Until an arrow pierces through his liver, and as a bird hastens to the snare, so he does not know that it will cost him his life. Here's a bird that sees some food, and it goes down and grabs that food, not knowing that it's a trap. And the trap is sprung, and a snare is sprung, and he's caught, and he cannot get out, and he is going to die. So with immorality, he does not know, this person walking into immorality, does not know that it will cost him his life. No bird would scoop down and grab that morsel of bread or whatever if it knew that it was going to die as a result. No one committing adultery or immorality or involved in pornography would chase after such a thing if they knew it was going to cost them their spiritual life. But because they don't know that, and because they don't believe that, they often fall for that trap. And so here's a number of consequences. Each of these consequences should serve as a warning to you and I not to be involved in these types of sins. I certainly hope that this is instructive and helpful to all of us. We're going to look tomorrow, though, and end up the week by looking at some of the ways we can avoid such sexual sins. And hopefully that'll be even more helpful than what we've said so far this week. Join us tomorrow.